Once again, back to the PFA, very exciting, right? Our second one now, coming out of COVID. Amazing, right? How many years we've been doing this? So we're going to talk today about recruiting and hiring and all that. We have a fantastic panel. People travel pretty far here, so very excited. Start with David Nilssen, longtime franchising friend, the current CEO and founder of DOXA Talent, as Nicole mentioned, global staffing firm that we work with. And full disclosure, Josh and I have partnered with Nicole in the recently opened DOXA office, so we're very excited about that. David was also the co-founder of Guidant Financial, which is actually where we met probably 15 or so years ago, helping franchisees secure and using their 401k rollover plans. David flew in from Boise, Idaho to be here today, so we really appreciate that. Thanks, David. And Brian Beers. Brian, he's built an impressive local multi-unit portfolio of franchise businesses from Midas Shop, service businesses. I think I ended up following him on Twitter. That's how we met. He came to the last PFA. And it's great. He just launched a towing business to support his Midas Shop. So he's certainly hired a lot of people, building these scalable operations. We can all learn from that. Really focused on recruitment, and he's obsessed with unit level profitability of the franchisees, something we all should be obsessed with in the franchise business. So thank you very much, Brian, for taking the time to share best practices. And as Rocco said, we all learn from the things we've done right, and certainly from the things we've done wrong. And Courtney Yeager, also traveled in here. Thank you very much. Founder and CEO of the Tox, great client of ours, a wellness studio. They've had unbelievable growth since launching the franchise really less than 2 years ago. Courtney's really bootstrapped her original Tox location, built it into a multi-unit operation before franchising, and no stranger to recruiting on a budget and figuring out ways to just kind of hustle and make it happen. So we're also very lucky to have her here. So thank you guys for joining us. So our topic today, hiring for franchise success, best practices, and keep this interactive. I don't want to ask all the questions, so, we have a big room, but I think everybody's got nice, loud voice. I don't know if you have a microphone there. Feel free to ask. So I guess, I'll kind of start off. I'll start off here with Courtney. Early on, how did you budget some of the new team members? Like, how did you kind of decide when you would start hiring people?
I once had somebody tell me, if you hire when you're ready, then you waited too long. There's been so many different strategies. It's been a mix of offshore. It's been fractional. We grew pretty fast, and I wish somebody would have told me what a huge investment it was to franchise, because you have to grow your teams way before you ever make a dime. So I would say I really leveraged the fractional part of it. Myself and my husband still wear so many hats because we have to. But I do it super intentionally, and I always wait until I find the right people at the right time. So offshore and fractional have been a game changer for me in the past year.
That's great. And Brian, we were talking yesterday about the sort of percentage in that. Like, when do you know when it's time to expand a team, or how do you kind of budget and balance?
Yeah, so at the store level, we look at a number of different ways for us. A lot of it's driven by what payroll percentage we're looking for. So in our business, let's say we want to get to 25% as a percentage of payroll of our sales. And so if a store is lower than that, maybe we're at 22, and we feel like we're potentially leaving money on the table, and that the store could do a lot more if we've got the people to do it. So that's a big driver for us. And then it's the question of, do we have the right people, right? Because we may have bodies in the seat, but then if they're not producing at the level that we need, then that's when we're looking to upgrade. Because in our business, our success is 80% determined by the people that we have. And we could change one or two people in one of our locations and literally double the revenue the next week. It is that impactful. And so a lot of times it feels like we're pushing this donkey up the hill the whole time with somebody, and it's usually we have the wrong person. We make a change, and instantly those problems go away, and we can double the revenue. And so that's a lot of times we have to tell ourselves, I think it's tough to make those decisions, but then after you do it, you're like, man, why didn't I do this months ago? So
it's always the hardest decision, but it has the biggest impact, right? Yeah, and getting that culture fit. So David, you transitioned from your guiding days. I think originally it was really all onshore, and then you made that transition to offshore. Now that you've been doing this a while, what do you think is the biggest, a lot of people want to do it, they think they do it, mistake that people make in the offshore world?
I think the biggest mistake is that they really aren't committed to the strategy itself. A lot of people start to think about offshore talent as something they want to explore, and so they'll hire one person, but they don't make a large enough strategic bet in order for them to put the level of effort in to make it work. A lot of companies are centralized. They work out of offices and they bring on some outside worker, and they're somebody that's sort of sitting in cyberspace and they don't treat it with the same sort of discipline. So that'd be number one, is I think they sort of think they have to do this, but they don't have a real clear use case for it. I think the second thing is, when you operate in an office, you can be a little sloppier than when you work with remote teams. With remote teams, you have to be more clear on your practices, how you communicate with them, what are the objectives that you're looking for. And so I think that is a struggle that people make or are challenged by, is trying to make the jump from an in-office strategy to one where they're working with external resources.
Yeah, and on the offshore stuff, so we do a ton of outsourcing. So for perspective, our company has about 50 million in revenue. We have 200 employees, but our entire back office is in the Philippines. So we have a CFO locally, we have an HR person locally, and then besides that, we have a controller, we have accounts payable, accounts receivable. We have 15 people. Our entire back office is in the Philippines.
That's funny, because I was actually just talking to somebody. I actually think the future of work looks very different than today, in that there's really 4 core offices, right? You have your revenue office, you have your talent office, you've got your operations office, and then your technology office. And I think the middle management of the future are going to be those that are either managing outsourced resources or AI agents. And so the way that I see it in the future is, you're going to have your strategic layer, which it sounds like you do onshore, and then a lot of the additional work is being done in different geographies or through different technologies.
Yeah, and then we've seen, to his point, we have the most success with them, but we just treat them like every other employee. All of our remote talent gets paid time off and paid holidays, and we reimburse for other things. They are just employees of ours that just happen, to live in the other side of the world. And that's, it's been a huge.
And that's a tie into the culture piece of it, right? And so I'd even ask, or how do you balance that? How do you keep that culture piece? How important is that with your whole workforce?
Yeah, we sponsor a Christmas dinner in the Philippines. They all get together and send us pictures, and so they have their own kind of culture there that they're part of it. And then they integrate just through Slack and Teams with our people, and it's, we do for our people, they have to respect them just as much as they respect anybody else, and so that works for us.
Yeah. So Tom, you talked about, so prior to starting DOXA, I started a company called Guidant Financial. And this is where we were based out of Seattle, where the $15 minimum wage originated. Apologize in advance. That was a real struggle for us, because we were competing with mega companies there. And so we ended up outsourcing, or starting the journey to outsourcing, in 2015, 2016. Well, when that happened, what we found is that the industry was really built on values that we didn't appreciate. So, it's generally the outsourced worker. They have no relationship with the company. They generally don't even have, they don't know the people that they're working with. It's just, you send work over to another geography. It's lower cost, set it, forget it. We started actually making investments in trying to integrate them into our culture. So I was making 2 trips a year over to the Philippines to have dinner and break bread with them, because in some of these other countries, the way that they build relationships is different than the way that we build them here. So a lot of times here, we're more task-based, right? I know Jay told me he was going to do X, Y, and Z. He did it, now I trust him. But there, it's about relationships. I know your family. I've done business with your uncle. We've broken bread together. And so that treating them as part of the culture is where you get the best out of them long term.
I can speak to that, because I've been to one of those Christmas parties in the Philippines, and I will tell you, if you ever want to go to a really great holiday party, it's in the Philippines. Courtney, turning over to you, you talked about the fractional. So talk about when we talk about, offshore, but they're full-time folks. And so you're pulling in that culture. How do you balance the culture and the scale and getting people the buy-in of, I don't know, they're really vendors, but how have you managed that process as a new franchisor?
It's integrating them into all of our processes. We're on daily, weekly Zoom meetings with them, the same that we are with our, high-level corporate employees. So culture is everything to us. We treat everybody the same. We, include them, but the fractional, anywhere from a CMO to the tech side, has been amazing for our company. When I first started, I we didn't have any systems or processes built out, and to be able to hire somebody, especially like on the tech side for fractional, was a game changer. And now I look back, looking back at the year, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what we would have done if we didn't make that move at that time.
So take the other angle for each of you. What mistakes there's a lot of emerging companies, people who are starting their brands. If you were to sort of look back and think of things that maybe you didn't do so well in recruiting and hiring.
For me, it's like expectations. I thought that everybody would, have the know-how week 1, week 2. Franchising has moved really fast for us, and I think it's really important to like slow down and create the clear path forward. And I didn't always do that. A lot of self-reflection. How can I be better, do better? Hire with the intention to have them grow with us. So I think just, being accessible, having that clear vision from the beginning, and having patience with them, because there's a lot of moving parts in every business, and you can't expect everybody to get it right away.
That's great.
Yeah, I've made a ton of hiring mistakes. Let's see. Let's start with, I think.
No names.
Pat, George. No, yeah, I think a lot of it is viewing it as an investment versus like an expense. I think that's like a big one, especially when you're hiring someone who's going to take over tasks that you like currently do. And if it's like you're going to pay this person 6 figures, and it's like, well, that's coming directly out of my pocket. It's going to be eventually really hard to make those decisions versus, viewing it as like this person's going to be able to unlock, 40 to 50 hours of my time, which like I'm going to then be able to use to like really move the business forward and focus on these things that like no one else can do but me. So for our business, it was acquisition focused. So if I got out of operations, I could focus more on acquisitions, and that's how we've, a lot of our growth has come from. So
that's a great way to look at it, as an investment instead of an expense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything said, so I'll just say +1. I think for me, we've had to actually exercise a little bit different muscle. So today we have about 1,000 employees between the Philippines, Kenya, Colombia, and Vietnam. And we're fully remote. There's absolutely zero office. And so for us, we've had to really get disciplined about how we select the right people, how we think about onboarding and training, because they just can't pick up the things that you would pick up in an office through osmosis. And let alone, it's also a different culture. And for that reason, they don't do business the exact same way. So training and onboarding, making sure that you're investing significantly, not just when they first enter the organization, but on an ongoing basis, is really important.
Any questions? Thank you. It's great. Really, really great stuff. Questions, anybody? I can keep going. Right there. I think John's got it. First one from the audience is hard, then it starts breaking out.
Thanks, Lena. Yeah, so just a question about the fractional basis of the employees. So just as an example, I decide to move forward. I need, start off with one employee. Will that employee be shared with other businesses? And if so, will that employee be my consistent person, or will I get a different person?
So I think it depends, right? I mean, it
sort of depends. So if you look at the outsourcing industry in general, there's a lot of different ways that you can engage outsourced workers, whether they're onshore, nearshore, or offshore, it doesn't really matter. If you have a project that you need done, then contracting makes a lot of sense, right? You just go, there's a lot of different platforms out there, a lot of ways to engage with professionals for projects themselves. If you're going to have an ongoing relationship, a full-time, dedicated, ongoing relationship, then there are a few different ways to structure it. One is you can become your own employer. The second is you can work with an agency, a group that, like us, that employs them directly and then leases them. The one place you have to be a little bit careful, because the same independent contractor misclassification issues exist in all the countries we do business that do in the US. So if you want someone full-time and dedicated, then you really should choose to either become an employer directly yourself, and you'll have to decide if that's worth the time, energy, expense, and distraction, or work with an organization on that. The question, though, around is if you go with a fractional person, then yes, they're likely going to be engaging with other companies. We only do full-time and dedicated because load balancing between them doesn't make a lot of sense. If you fall in love with that team member and you want to take them now to a full-time role, then I've got to go tell another client like, hey, we're taking this person away or replacing them. So I personally am a big fan of the full-time dedicated model unless it's just a project-based role.
You know, to speak to the fractional, because then you have, so that's the offshore fractional, but then you'll have the domestic fractional where you might get a dedicated person, and you've done a lot of fractional professionals.
Sure. It's actually the opposite. So like my offshore team are 100% dedicated to us. They work 40 hours a week for us. They don't work anywhere else. But on the fractional side, we're almost like a client of theirs. And they do have multiple brands that they work with. So I believe that they dedicate like 15 to 20 hours a week to us. And they have, there's multiple teams that, work on our brand. It's not just one person, but we do have one dedicated like point person.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. I don't know if I shut this off. But that's what I was looking at. As a growing company, you might want to start with a fractional and but still have the consistency of having that one person understand your business as your business grows, and then maybe that person can turn into then a full-time person.
Absolutely. The company that I've been working with, they have that same mindset that if we love that person so much, we are open to hiring them full time. So it's very conversational when it comes to that.
Great.
What are the roles that you have fractionally?
Right now, we have all of our tech fractional. So anything tech related is not my thing. We've been interviewing for a CMO, but marketing is my thing. So that's been a little bit more challenging for me to find somebody. And
also franchise sales, which I think there's been a big trend for emerging brands when you look back and you think, the cost of a full franchise salesperson and should the founder be doing it? And there's a whole bunch of, the FSOs, franchise sales organizations, that you can get an experienced franchise salesperson that maybe works on 3 or 4 brands. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds.
Yes. So I do have an FSO that's been completely, it's taken our brand from 10 locations to now almost 90. I can't imagine ever even bringing our franchise sales in-house. It's so much work, but we have one dedicated salesperson, and then we have a VP that oversees 4 other brands.
I'll actually add something because I think this coincides with the question that was asked earlier. When do you know when to hire, right? So when we started DOXA, I didn't need a full-time CFO when we first started. So I actually had a fractional CFO out of San Francisco that we used. One, because I didn't have enough work for them full-time. The second reason is because I wanted to date before we got married. That's a big relationship, right? And so we ended up engaging this person for about 12 to 18 months, I think, before we finally made them a permanent part of the business. And so it was a really nice way for us to get that strategic leadership invested in the business early, see how we work together. Is it a cultural fit? Are we getting the outcomes we want before making it a permanent relationship?
Great question, John. Other questions? So I'll keep going here. Brian, I want to ask you this. What would you say, especially for the emerging franchisors that are here, that you've seen as maybe a best practice for you in terms of, obviously everybody's nervous about the joint employer and the franchisor can't really hire for you, but yet there's some guidance that there's an expectation as a franchisee. So now you're much more experienced. Now you have this. You probably don't need that level anymore. But sort of thinking back to when you were looking for that guidance on how do you build out your team, what would you say is a best practice and maybe a worst practice?
Yeah, the worst practice is telling them who to hire and what to pay them, right? So I think the big power in a franchise community is the network, right? It's the franchisee to franchisee, because they're the ones that are really going to be able to talk about like what's working in the different markets and sharing best practices, and franchisees can tell each other whatever they want in terms of how they structure bonus plans and compensation and signing bonuses, anything related to pay and all those factors. And so, I think number one, the best thing to do is to ensure that franchisees have kind of the ability, or if not, facilitate the conversations between each other to share, hey, what's working, or if you're aware that, hey, this whatever certain franchisee just made a really good hire, they seem to be having it together, maybe they're doing a little bit differently, find out what they're doing, and then maybe you can't directly, if you're concerned about the law, and I'm not, up on it all, but coordinate between that, because together it's totally fine, right? And so I think that would be the main thing is facilitating the conversation. And then in terms of like a model side, it's like, what should the business be doing? At least in the models I'm in, it's back to that like payroll percentage or revenue per employee. There's certain KPIs that they should be able to know, like, am I doing well? Do I have enough people? Do I have the right people? And so I think from the franchisor's perspective, it's making sure that the franchisees kind of have like that scorecard to know, are we, am I on track or not? Not only on like the whatever leads and estimates and the marketing side, but on the production, which would then, payroll and hiring would all come into.
So really get those percentages that you talked about, like at 20%, benchmarking that across the brand so everybody
It could be
see.
that, or other brands. It could be a revenue per employee. It could be there's other ones that I think could be depending on whatever the model is. But having that guidance, I think, is then they know, hey, am I doing well or not?
And Courtney, as a franchisor, have you sort of shared best practices? Because you run a number of your own corporate stores. So has that helped your franchisees?
It's that fine line, right? Like, you can only give so much guidance, and there's so many times where you want to be like, please don't hire that person, but you can't say that. But then to your point, on the other side of it, for me, having so many brand new franchisees, it's like the blind leading the blind. And I don't want them to go and talk to each other about things that they haven't experienced yet because they are brand new. So they are looking to me, who's done it, 10 plus times. And it's just a fine line of, we can give them the guidelines, we can give them the tools, but we can't control it.
Yeah, one of the big mistakes I see a lot of new franchisees make, because we run a franchise consulting business too, is like they want to hire a GM way too soon. Like they maybe because they're like afraid of it or whatever, and they're like, I'm just gonna like hire all these people, and they want to take more of a passive role to begin, and so then their payroll is really high because they brought on like a more experienced person, and then they're not like in the weeds as much as they should be to really like learn the business. And so that's the thing that we really coach and talk to people about, is like they really need to get in there and like and learn it and get the lumps, and like then they know what good looks like. And then when they hire people, they can call the bullshit out when they say, oh, you can't do that, and they're like, well, no, I just did it, and this is what you need to do. So I think it's easier to come from that position versus being totally hands off, and then their payroll's really high, and then the people they hire aren't going to care as much as they are in terms of like building the business. And so then the business is growing slower, and you have all this extra payroll, and then you blame the franchisor of like, oh, it's not working.
Franchisees blaming the franchisors? That never happens. No, look, it's a great comment, because I think I think we even did a panel on working on the business, not in the business. And that's aspirational. I mean, my EOS coach is here, and we're always trying to do that. But I think it takes a lot of time until you really get to that point. Dave, you have a comment on that, right? About doing.
Can you see it on the tip of my
weeds.
tongue? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have an experience with this because I was a franchisee of a therapeutic-based massage, membership-based massage franchise about a decade ago. And when I first entered that business, it was a resale situation. My wife had said she wanted to, run a franchise. It was sold as a semi-absentee owner business. And the franchisor, which probably explains why there was a lot of challenges, even said that I didn't have to go to training because I clearly knew how to run a business. So here we launched the business, and I'm thinking, well, listen, I know how to run a business, so I don't have to get involved. Exactly what you just described is how it played out. Hired a GM really quickly. That person went to training, but when that person clearly wasn't the right fit, I had to get back involved, which I didn't have the time for. I didn't understand the business, and I didn't really know what the needs were. And then every excuse seemed legitimate, right? So yeah. I think I've lived this.
Yeah. And I think it's applicable to new franchisors also, right? Doing the stuff yourself in the beginning just to build that muscle.
Yeah, and I think it's like a harder line on like who you hire. And I think a lot of, it's like we can get this new franchisee in, they've got all this money, they want to buy these units, but then they don't want to be involved at all. And it's like they've got this like big vision of where they want to take it, and they're trying to run it like that from day one, but it doesn't work. Like it requires work, even, franchise or not, it still takes a lot of work to get the plan off the ground. So
I always tell all of our owners they have to work in the business for 6 months. It's so important. And like myself, I still own 10 corporate locations. So I'm still answering phones at night. So you can't expect to have the same results that I've had with my studios if you're not going to put in the same amount of work that I put into mine. But it's tough.
I'm just scanning around as I get blind there. What has been some of your best recruitment? We talk about the when and the why, but getting into the how. What has been some of your best recruitment techniques? I'd love to hear that from like each of you?
I've done a lot of my recruiting, like studio level on Indeed. LinkedIn, I also scout people every single day. And I've kept great relationships. So our VP is by far my best hire. We worked in a different business together 8 years ago, and always in the back of my mind, I was like, she was so wonderful. When I can, I need her on our team. So I think like creating the relationships and putting them in your back pocket for when you're ready is a really great tactic.
Yeah, I have a few. I mean, my best by far is for senior level people. We have had really good success hiring former military special operations guys. So, guys retiring straight out of the military. So, like Navy SEAL, Green Beret, Army Ranger. That tier. And so the guy who's the CEO now of my Midas business, we hired him 2.5 years ago, right out of the Army, and within 2.5 months, he had taken over my job. I mean, awesome accountability, leadership, emotional intelligence, like all the skills. So I've hired three now, and it is by far. So there's two foundations. One of them is called SOTF. It's SOTF.org. I'm on the advisory board there, and there's another one called the Honor Foundation. So if you're looking for like a COO or like higher level executive position, these guys are awesome. That's been my secret sauce.
I'll give you two. So at the philosophical layer, we have an internal referral program, right? So if one of our team members refers somebody in and they're hired, then there's an economic incentive for them. And there's also a cultural benefit for us because you've all heard people leave because of their manager, but they stay because they feel like they have a good friend in the organization. And so that actually really helps in terms of retention. At the very tactical layer, though, we actually started implementing AI as a way to help us read and analyze job orders the applicants as they come in, because on some jobs, we might even get upwards of 400 to 600 applicants, and trying to pan through all of that for the gold it can be really challenging. It requires you to deploy a lot of human capital, and so for us, we've actually implemented some technology that allows us to filter through that much faster, and it's actually the technology outperforms the human every single time.
How soon do you think new business, say you're a new franchisor and you're starting out, should you bother documenting your hiring process, getting it on paper, or is it just sort of like, be curious as, I know what my answer is, but I'd be curious what you guys think.
I mean, I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, our process for hiring in general is relatively simple in that, it all depends on the leadership positions. It's highly relational based. It's like, breaking bread. It's really getting to know them. That's what I really care about. So there's not like an SOP there. For the entry level people, I mean, it's speed to lead. It's how quickly can we contact them, get them on the phone, get them in person. Like, that's what matters to the lower level hiring. So
I don't really, at least for me, we're really disciplined about documentation. So for us, it's documenting it is really critical, because the only way I know how to improve it is if there's actually a process to improve upon. So, I would say documenting all of your processes in your business, your core processes at least, are really critical, and then having a way to go back and revisit those on a regular basis. I would say.
And do you guys, have you ever developed a plan? I think we were talking about that, kind of a plan of like when you get to a certain level, like how far out do you go, knowing like revenue level or customer level or something, where you start to put it in buckets, and how often do you tweak that?
You mean in terms of when to hire?
When to hire.
Yeah, so we forecast that. Mine's a little bit different because we're actually in the staffing business, right? So that's, we see the customer demand coming, and we can react to that within a 3 to 4 month period of time. So that's it. But similar to what Brian was alluding to, we've built ratios in our business. We know what percentage of our revenue needs to go to support staff for our workers, and we've built ratios on that. So I know every 25 billable workers that we have, I need an HR business partner, and every 7 HR business partners, I need an ops manager. And we're always trying to improve in those ratios and gain more leverage in the business. But for us, we've built it in a very systematic way that allows us to forecast. So when we know we sort of in between that 25 mark, we need to start hiring for the next role.
So for me on this, there's two different parts. It's like on the studio level, we're constantly looking at, capacity and just like looking and saying, when do we need to hire? We want their payroll to remain low so they're able to profit sooner. So this morning on the meeting, it was, okay, these 4 locations need to hire in the next month. Higher level positions, it's when we feel we need it. It's harder for us. We're a very small team and like we go by energy and accountability. So as soon as somebody from our team says, I need to unload this, or, I feel that I could be better if I had another hand, then of course we'll hire. But I would say that that's going to take about 6 months. So we're always looking ahead and saying, to get somebody up to speed to where we need them to be, it's going to be 6 months.
Yeah, so at the store level, it's a combination of both. So one, if we have new stores coming on, it's like we're going to want somebody, who currently employs for us that can take over that new store. So like we'll timeline out that. And then besides that, like our business is so dependent on the quality of the person we have running it. And so like we have a whiteboard and, all 34 names, and it's like an A, B, C, or, D. And, it's really just, can we try to replace two of the D players and get them up to, a B and then hopefully an A. And so that's kind of the game. We'll attack it more like on a store by store basis. And so like right now, Delaware County for us like needs more support. So like we're really focused on trying to recruit as many people as we can in Delaware County. And then it's like, can we get them in these, like maybe we have two or 3 openings there. So we do it somewhat geographically based on that business.
I'll add one more comment that I think is just really helpful in general for any business. And this is probably more for the franchisors, especially in the early stages, it's very dynamic how the organization evolves, right? So we have a practice in our business where once a year we have a talent conversation with our board and we're forecasting out the next 12 to 24 months. What's the organizational chart going to look like? And then how do we think about succession planning within the business relative to those roles, which helps us start to think about, who do we need to start recruiting early and developing relationships with, so that we're not so reactive in that process. And I think it's actually a discipline. It's not something that I've done historically in my business, but the last couple of years we have, and it's been extremely helpful in terms of thinking about how the organization has evolved, how am I going to develop some of these emerging leaders within my business, and then what are some of the gaps we have that we need to start to think about filling today.
That's good. And how do you find the current environment? How have things shifted, with, is recruiting harder? Is it easier? Maybe easier because you've gotten better at it, but any changes?
I mean, it's always been tough for us. I don't know. Like it's 15. I've been in the business 15 years, and it's always been a challenge. So it's nothing new to me. I don't know.
I always find that like if the culture is great, the employees stay, and it's easier to retain. Hiring in general in our industry is difficult.
I think it's super dynamic right now. You look at, we've got demographic shifts that are happening in the U.S. There's a talent scarcity issue that's here to stay. You've got the changing personas that have come out post-COVID. Now there's a lot of people embracing remote work, or at least the hybrid model, and so that's opening up new geography. So I think, at least what I've seen, is a lot of our clients are just strategically confused how to think about all of these things and how to think about their talent strategy long term. And now you add AI to the equation, and how is that going to change the landscape? So I think from a recruiting standpoint, if the customer, or if the company is clear about, what they're trying to accomplish, what are the needs that they're looking for, and what type of workplace strategy they have, then it's easy. It's the ones that are strategically confused that I think are really struggling.
Any other questions here? So keep going down. Change directions a little bit, David. We had a very interesting conversation yesterday because everybody knows our last panel was the big exit, and for franchisors, especially emerging brands. And you had made a really interesting comment that I'd love to just repeat about PE firms and looking at your recruiting practices and whether you're using 1099 employees here or there, and that due diligence dive that if you're trying to get a big multiple, how important is that about the cost basis?
Well, so we were talking about was the comment I made earlier that in the outsourcing world, many companies actually independently contract their workers, but they're really employees masked as independent contractors. It's the misclassification issue that you hear about a lot right now across the U.S. California in particular is really hot on this topic. We have had a lot of PE firms referring us companies today where they're not willing to do a transaction until somebody cleans up the compliance, the legal, the HR, and even the data and security risks that are associated with that. And so, so whether you're going to raise capital, whether you want to exit your business, it is a potential obstacle to those types of transactions if you're incorrectly structured.
So basically, like if you have 1099 employees in the States, it's going to be looked at anywhere. So you have to be really careful, either formally fractional or buttoned up as employees.
Yeah, and in the last year or two, you've started to see that there's some collaboration that's happening between both the U.S. and other governments. For example, the Philippines BIR is starting to pay really close attention to this because many of their workers aren't actually paying taxes, and so they've got to get their pound of flesh at some point as well. And so as the industry continues to grow and build momentum, that's just going to draw heavier scrutiny.
Courtney, I want to ask you, with newer franchisees and obviously some people who've never owned a business before, they've never hired somebody before, how have you managed, that process of trying to get a new franchisee to just get better at recruitment, or is it just an ongoing?
It's an ongoing mentorship for sure. We can give them all of the templates, all of our best practices, but we're finding that they always love to go and do their own thing and then come back and look at us. Why? Yeah, it's an ongoing mentorship every single day. We have a strong support system that is constantly on Zoom with them, just, coaching
And do you
them.
find that, especially for the emerging franchisors, as you're signing up franchisees, do you find that that's a real failure point, that a new franchisee recruits the wrong person to work in the business is a major
I've
challenge?
seen both sides. I have some that do a fantastic job at it, and then some that deviate and do their own thing, and then they learn quick because employees are going to be their biggest expense. So it's a retraining right away, and I'll never try that again. But
Yeah, that's what we talk to people all the time. It's like, you just got to do it. I think a lot of people are afraid to pull the trigger, and they're afraid, and then they wait so long and the person gets another job, and it's like, rather than, you just got to do it. And if you mess up, you document, all right, what were the red flags? And then, all right, maybe next time I won't hire somebody who has 17 jobs in the last 2 years. You learn things. And then, and the other one for us is trying to really hire from core values. So we try to identify what are the common things that we look for in people, and driven, team player, accountable, et cetera. And then we try to structure questions around the traits that they are, who they are as a person, and less, where they worked last. So we've had a lot of success in that because people don't change; they kind of are who they are. And so we try to really focus on that when hiring, and that helps.
Now, are you just trying to tease it out of them through conversations, or are you formally doing, there's some of the personality tests and?
So yeah, we put into ChatGPT. It'll give you a bunch of questions to ask, situational, how, tell me, whatever ones. We also use predictive profiles or predictive index. Whatever it's called. And that personality test, there's 15 different things that could fall in. And we have found correlations between our best performers within a couple of the profiles, and our worst performers are a couple profiles. And so
you'll go back and check
we had all of our employees take it, and to establish a baseline. And then every new person, when they apply, we send them this thing. It takes 5 minutes. And then, based on their profile, if they fall into the ones that's the not good employee bucket, generally will not be too excited to talk to them, versus the ones that fall into the bucket that our best managers are in. Those we're going to be really excited to talk to them. So that's been interesting. It's still kind of too early to say hey, this thing works really well, but there definitely are some correlations that's strong. And or we'll get maybe we'll get a technician, a lower level person, but then they fit the profile of our best performing managers, but they didn't apply for that job, but they have the personality that would match. So for then those type of people, there would be the ones that we may invest a little bit more training and development time into, and see if they're aspiring to a management role, and maybe try to get them out of a technician, for example, and into an assistant manager or customer service, and we try to develop people from within. And so that's the other angle we're using it, but too early to
How about you, David? The formal.
Yeah, so we have sort of 3 horizons that we look at. So one of them is, are we really clear on the objectives for the role? So what generally will happen is someone will say, well, I'm hiring an accountant or a sales development rep or a BI analyst, and they'll send us a job description. And inevitably, it's always titled as virtual assistant, because in this industry, everyone likes the term virtual assistant, which means jack of all trades to me. And they're unclear. I mean, generally the job description itself is really unclear on what they're trying to accomplish and how they would measure success. So I think that's the first one. Then it's, are you really clear on the skills that you need? Is there a cultural fit? And then we also use behavioral assessments as a way for us to understand who's going to work well in that environment. So for example, if somebody shows up in a behavioral assessment as someone that does not have a high attention to detail or good follow through, I probably would not put them in an accounting role. But someone who's also extremely social may not do well in a remote job, right? And so we look at a lot of those factors and try between those different horizons to make the right, to create the right fit.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things we've seen is like the sales and the operations are like the two big buckets for us. And it's like oil and water. People who are good at sales generally aren't good at like attention to detail, and people that are good at attention to detail generally aren't really good at driving sales. And so sometimes like if, for like one of our stores, for example, if we have a manager, we need both. Like we need it doesn't matter if like the manager's the sales driver or the assistant's the sales driver, but we need like that team together, and then they can do really well. Versus if we have two salespeople, they may sell like a lot, but then it's a total like, shit show on the like execution of it because all these balls are getting dropped. Then if you have two people who are like really good at attention to detail, they're not like that good at sales, and it's like we just don't sell enough then to justify, what they should be doing. And so like I think it's kind of that mix of people that assemble like a really good team, no matter like what it is.
And that's the challenge, I guess, when you're starting or emerging, you only
wear a lot of hats.
You only have the payroll for one role. Or are they going to be good at everything? How have you managed that, Courtney?
I don't know that we've done a great job.
That's what we're here to learn.
Yeah, it's been a struggle. I mean, on the studio levels, I love to recruit from within as well. Like I tell all of our franchisees, don't even put up a job post for a manager. Put up like front of the house and let them prove it to you for the first 6 months before you name a role. With a title, sometimes in this day and age, there's entitlement. So I love to just see the performance and then have those conversations with them. Where do they see themselves in, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years? And then from there, kind of just, this is where I see you, and see if it's a great fit.
You brought up EOS just a second ago.
Yeah.
Listen, I have just a handful of one franchisee actually. So this is something that we're still trying to figure out how we're going to help our team members in the future. But one thing that I do know is whether you're a franchisee or a manager, a lot of people really struggle with the discipline that is required to be a good manager. The thing I like about the EOS system, because we're run on EOS as well, is it has a very simple methodology to go back on a quarterly basis and look at, does this person get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it? Do they have
GWC, baby.
Yeah. Do they have values alignment, right? That is actually a really helpful framework. The other thing which Courtney you made me think of is one of my favorite books of all time is the book The Alliance. And The Alliance basically is how to build relationships with employees where you have an open dialogue about your future in this business. And they use tours of duty as the example, right? Like you're going to sign up for 2 years, you're going to do this job. But we know that eventually you need to move on. So my job is to prepare you for your next role. We hope it's here. But if it's not, it's okay. And you open up that dialogue right away to have conversations about how they want to develop, where their interests are, so that you can retain them long-term by helping them be successful within the organization and grow in a path that's consistent with what they want.
That's great. That's great.
I have a question for everyone on the panel. How do you balance virtual team building, in-person team building, and then getting the work done, but still building a team at the same time?
Go ahead, Courtney.
I mean, we are all on Zoom all day, every day together. And everybody on the team has the accountability factor, which you have to have. So we get our work done, but then for like our culture, we have wind down Wednesdays. We have, Friday nights at 5 p.m. Everybody signs on and we all go over our highs of the weeks and where we think that, we could have done better and how can we support each other. So we have a very close-knit team and we take the time to have conversations on a personal level with every meeting prior to going into the objective for the meeting and what needs to get done.
Yeah, I mean, for the in-person stuff, we've done, we try to do like end of year, mid-year, like probably 2 or 3 times a year get-togethers. We do them at bowling alleys and they're super cheap and they fit, the guys, whatever, it's pizza and beer, they like it. So that works really well for us. And then like we have like a managing partner program, so our top people like are in this like profit sharing program. And like so we're doing a business meeting and then going to Phillies game like in a week, couple weeks. And so we'll vary it up depending on who it is. And then virtual, yeah, I think they get together kind of on their own and we fund it.
Yeah, so my previous company, Guidant Financial, when we first started that business, we were all centralized in one location. And then eventually when we started outsourcing, I realized that we were creating a different playing field. Those that were in the office that had proximity, access to management, that could learn by osmosis, and then those that were not. And we had inconsistent practices because we defaulted to what we knew and understood internally. So I made the comment earlier, we've got 1,000 people. We literally have 0 office space, and that's very intentional because we wanted to create an even playing field for everybody. So the way we think about building culture is we do try to inject personal anecdotes in every single meeting to make sure that we're getting to know each other, not just as professionals, but also just as human beings. We've also defined our culture. We have this mantra, culture is connection, but we've done it across 5 different pillars. One is connection to the purpose, connection to the leadership, to the team, the client that they serve, and then also their career path. And we have both required and then optional ways for them to engage in each of those pillars. And all of our culture and team building and development activities align with one of those different things. We are, though, a remote first organization, not a remote only. So twice a year we get together as a group. So we host a client meeting in the Philippines every January where we all get together with our team members and our clients, and we learn and we celebrate and we give back together. So we try to curate some really impactful moments as a team, and then we distribute and do our work throughout the year.
You know, one of the things that we do is we have a kind of a rule guideline of either all on Zoom or none on Zoom. So I think we would have a problem. You might have 3 people in a conference room and 1 or 2 people call in, and then they're sort of disadvantaged in that meeting. So we felt that was kind of a disconnect and sort of unfair to the people who weren't there. So now it's like, even if poor Josh has to put up with my voice right through the wall. And then even if there's 1 person remote, we all do it on Zoom. And I think that has sort of balanced.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm alluding to, right? Because they've actually done this really well. Tom's team has done a phenomenal job of integrating their remote team members as part of the organization. And I think this is a great example of realizing like it's a disproportionate playing field. I remember the first time I called in from the outside to a team meeting, and my entire team is sitting around the table and they can read each other's body language. They can pick up on those silent nonverbal cues. And I was tone deaf to the whole thing. And I was sort of, cyber stalking them from the outside. And oftentimes they forgot I was on the call or didn't, it was just not a great experience. So we did the same thing. We said, like, if 1 person is remote, everyone is remote. And in that particular case, then we chose to go fully remote as an organization.
To go back to in person, we do a ton on the studio, store level with incentives. I'm huge on incentives, and I can look at so many of my studios and say, if you reach this amount this month, you will have a $2,000 team night bonus, and they'll go to a spa or go bowling or whatever it is. But it's always tied to an incentive, and that's worked really amazing for us.
All right, we're just about wrapping up because we don't want to cut short any of the networking time and talking to all of our sponsors. Oh, and by the way, we always make this announcement too. We're going to share everybody who signed up. We have your email. We're going to do what we had too many people to go around the room, so we're going to share that. If you want to be excluded from that list, let Lena know. Although I would counter, why are you coming to a networking event if you want to be excluded to that event, to that list? So one last question, unless there's another question here. Any others? So my wrap-up question. Go.
Sorry. Yeah, we have a few people who couldn't make it today, but they did send in a question. And it's kind of bifold, but I will just read it as is. So at different stages, on early stage as a franchisor journey and then established stage. So when you're just starting to franchise, which roles should you prioritize hiring for internally, and what can be outsourced until you gain traction? And through the emerging growth, I guess same question, and then established stage, especially when bringing in talent from outside the franchise world for more mature system, how do you approach executive hiring?
I would say the first role that I would hire for would be the one that I like doing the least. I can wear so many hats, but what takes the most time that I enjoy doing the least, and that's going to be the priority for my first hire.
How about you guys? Any comments on where you think the first, what's that most important first hire or as you scale? I love that answer, by the way. I think that's right on point.
Yeah, I think it's just hiring hiring before you need it is what you kind of said, especially in the franchise where franchisees are dependent on you. Yeah, I think to forward invest and take that kind of investment, not the like viewing it as an expense. And I think it would depend highly based on the skill set of the person. If they like fran dev sales, like maybe they do a lot of that, or you outsource that, or accounting, or like the coaches side of it. I think it's the franchisee support that's critical. So.
Yeah, I think I would echo what Courtney said. I think the founder can play a lot of different hats as the organization is growing, but making sure it's on the highest value that you can drive as a founder in the business makes a lot of sense. I think the second thing that I would say is anything that helps to improve the franchisee's experience. I can say this as a prior franchisee in an emerging brand, and also as a financing company. I've seen a lot of these emerging brands that sell a ton of units and then struggle to open them and struggle to support their franchisees because they're underinvested on the franchise support side. That's the place that I would look to try and resource earlier.
Great thoughts. Thank you. Any other phone-ins? All right. So my last question is, if you just, if you could think of one takeaway that people, you come to these, you hear a lot of things. This was all great stuff, by the way. Thank you. It was enjoyable. If you could think of like sort of that one takeaway, like if you were to just go home with like one thing with regards to recruitment and building out your team, what would it be?
Your franchisees are only going to be as successful as the teams that they hire. So coach them early, way before they even have their locations or they're close to opening. Have those conversations about what it takes to hire great employees, because that can absolutely make or break your business.
Yeah, echo that. The 80% of the success, at least in service-based businesses, is the people we have. And then if it feels like you're pushing a donkey up a hill, you need to fire them and recruit somebody else.
Yeah, so this is going to sound a little self-serving, but I'll qualify it with the fact that at Guidant Financial, we have 250 employees, but 40% of our workforce is offshore. So we decided early that if we made a strategic investment in this capability, it would give us a disproportionate advantage over our competition. And so from that standpoint, I really do believe making a strategic investment, not just one-off investment, is really, really important in distributing your workforce and gaining access to other geographies, cost efficiencies, building capacity, scaling faster, even in culture, which I wish we had time to talk about. But the last thing that I'll just note is I have never regretted letting someone go, but I have often regretted not moving fast enough. So I think if you start to sense there's a disconnect culturally or a skills gap and you don't feel like you can correct that, I would move faster, or I would encourage your franchisees to do the same.
Great stuff. Thank you, guys. Thank the panel.